What's up, everybody? Thank you for hanging out here with us. It is the Yahoo NFL Sunday show. Normally, I'm Adam Kaufman, by the way. Normally, we'd be joined by Eric Lindquist, but apparently he had to get married or something. So he's not around. Can we dig into this and find, is the wedding today? Because unless the wedding is today, I don't really understand why he's not here. And it's probably not a Friday wedding. It's probably tomorrow. So really, this guy needs to get his priorities in order. But that's okay. He's not around. It's actually your gain out there, and certainly mine, because I get to work with somebody here new. We got Matt Savoca here with us. How are you, man?
Hey, thrilled to be here. Eric, yeah, what are you doing, man? Slacking. If you're not at the altar right now, you should be analyzing DFS for the people. That's why we're here. Yes, I'm excited to get the call up, but ultimately, this really is about Eric and his inability to show up at work on important days.
I guarantee he's still making lineups today. So what the hell? You can't just talk about it for an hour?
He is.
Advise the people if you sit there and be selfish and only help yourself. It's unreal. Well, maybe the chat wants to get involved, and we'll have to repeat this a little bit later on too, since obviously we're just starting off with the show and people are filtering in as they typically do. And if you're finding us on YouTube or Twitter, wherever you got us, we appreciate it. We thank you for being here with us. What would be some good wedding presents, do we think, for Eric Lindquist? Like what do you get the man who has absolutely everything? You know, what should we be sending his way? Do we send him an e-gift card or something like that?
Yeah. I don't know. My go-to answer for this, like, what do you get someone who has everything? Does everyone have a Peacock subscription? No one has a Peacock subscription. The paid service. I don't know. Get the man a shot glass or something. Maybe a fantasy football world championship entry ticket. That might be nice.
Yeah, as it is. I mean, he goes to a lot of the live finals anyway, I think, as a plus-one situation. Carlos says in the chat, is half the Awesemo team at Lindquist's wedding? It's a good question. You know, I raised that question yesterday and was told, maybe one or two people. I hope he invited the bosses, right? Like, if you're Alex, are you not wildly offended if you didn't get the invite at least to Lindquist's wedding?
Yeah, I have to say that probably is an official demerit category offense there. So I hope he didn't do something like that. At the same time, we've got with multiple people out. We're spinning the plates over here. But hey, again, I'm thrilled to be here breaking down the Yahoo slate. And this is actually my first show dedicated to Yahoo specifically in the main slate. I've done some showdown shows here, and so I'm really excited to dig into this one. And plus, we know a lot more this hour, 3 o'clock on Friday that we're recording than we did even 1 or 2 hours ago. I'm kind of thankful it's at this point in the afternoon and not earlier. Some more clarity.
Oh, it's true. We're getting news about guys getting ruled out, obviously, like Nick Chubb is not going to play this weekend. You know, it's the situation there in Tampa with some of those receivers either out or questionable. Some of Tom Brady's pass catchers. Kyler Murray is a game time decision coming up this weekend. There's a whole lot of stuff on the table, obviously, for us to get right to in a matter of moments, focused in particular on that main slate as Matt broke down. But first, as we always like to tell you, we are here because of our friends at Yahoo. We have partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this NFL season. Want to educate you here on everything you need to know. Some great offers coming your way. We have an exclusive limited time offer. It gets you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Check it out. To qualify, you need to be new to Yahoo. That is the caveat here. You got to be new to Yahoo. Sign up for an account via the link below. Deposit and play. It is really just that simple. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest. We will reach out via email with your coupon. If you need immediate access, email support@awesemo.com. We'll get you all set up. You can also claim a free $10 below, which can be used to enter any Yahoo contest, including coming up here in just a matter of days, the $100,000. You got the Monday Night Baller contest, among others. Make sure you use our DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give yourself the best opportunity to win big. So that in mind, let's get to it here. We'll talk about a bunch of these games. We'll obviously go position by position, the best plays, the best value plays, all of it, everything in between. But overarching thoughts from you, my friend. I mean, what are you looking forward to here on this slate? What are you watching for?
Well, we got a couple of high totals, a couple of smash spots for offenses. And what I keep seeing this week is, I keep calling it a couple of mulligans on the schedule. Denver walloped Dallas last week. Dallas was heavily favored at home, and the betting lines just don't seem to care about it. And meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons on the other side did nothing but impress in a victory against New Orleans, which, by the way, has a pretty strong defense, stronger by most metrics than Dallas. They did fine, and now Atlanta is basically getting no love whatsoever. They are 10-point underdogs in the highest total game on the slate. Tom Brady's got all his weapons questionable or out already. Doesn't matter. They're 10-point favorites on the road at Washington. And I'll say this. I can't believe how little concern there is about the Buffalo Bills, who got beat 9-6 by the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. And nobody cares because they're playing the Jets. And so they're favored by 13. Some big smash spots for them, even though I felt like we got a little more uncertainty injected into those situations just last week.
It is an 11-game slate, of course, that Monday or Sunday main slate. So that means Chiefs, Raiders, Rams, Niners. They are the primetime teams. Of course, as we know, the Bears, Bengals, Giants, Texans, they all have byes. So those are teams we will not be talking about. And the Dolphins, they upset the Ravens last night, 22-10 in Miami. That was a game that, I mean, Baltimore was heavily favored. Lamar Jackson, you want to talk smash spots. He was a guy that was, projected high scorer on the slate for the entire weekend, was supposed to come out and rock that joint there at Hard Rock. Didn't end up happening. He was bad. The Ravens were bad. That defense for Miami was impressive, to say the least.
Impressive, yeah.
Even losing a quarterback halfway through that game and Jacoby Brissett going down, Tua comes out. He had been questionable to play in the first place and, looked pretty good in relief. So I know we got to get to Sunday, but if Thursday is any indication here, Matt, it's going to be another wonky weekend in the NFL. Maybe this will be another weekend where you see teams like the Bills upset by teams like the Jaguars, where just everything is upside down.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into when you're playing in big tournaments. Don't be afraid to get weird, because just as we saw last night, things can get strange. We saw Isaiah Ford with over 80 yards receiving. Nobody had that in their projections. So not to say that our Awesemo projections aren't good. Believe me, they are industry best. But we're taking projections with a grain of salt, introducing some uncertainty, getting weird with things so we can try to have a unique lineup that takes down those tournaments this weekend.
We got you hanging out with us for the better part of an hour, about 45 more minutes. So we thank you all for being here with us. People are already, getting ready for us to get the running backs and the Browns and all that. Dearness season. Dearness goes to wherever the heck Cleveland's playing this weekend. We'll get into all that stuff. But first, let's talk about these quarterbacks. And we've shouted out the Bills a couple times. Well, this is a rebound spot, obviously, here for Josh Allen. He is the top projected scorer on the main slate. In fact, the rest of the weekend, for that matter, including Monday night, he is tied with Tom Brady as well as Dak Prescott for the most expensive, $40 here on Yahoo for Allen, projected for just about 26 points. He's got a matchup with those Jets, so we'll see, what ends up happening. I don't know. I'm hesitant to just write off the Jets now that Mike White's in charge. If it were Zach Wilson, sure, we'll just abuse them all day long. But when it's Mike White, my friend, who knows what is possible here for these New York Jets, gangrene. But Josh Allen, like I said at the top there, Patrick Mahomes in prime time, so we're not worried about him. Tom Brady projected for about 22 points, $40 as mentioned against Washington. Jalen Hurts about 22 points against Denver, $33. So those are your top three that we're looking at for the main slate here. Is this an obvious play in expecting a rebound from Josh Allen?
It's a pretty obvious play. When you look at our value rankings, he's not at the very top, but he's not in an egregious spot, meaning the salary to get up to the highest projection at the highest projected position is not bad this week. And what can you say about the Jets defense that is positive, really? And Mike White doesn't affect that side of the ball at all. If you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, which just contextualizes the fantasy points allowed by a defense for the offenses that they've already faced, there is no defense worse in the NFL by that metric, and it's not particularly close. You see some defensive ratings out there saying Detroit, some saying Washington. The Jets in this metric, by far the worst, and they're playing Josh Allen, who, I still think the ceiling is exactly what we thought it was going into this season. I just thought it was going to happen last week against the Jaguars. By most metrics, though, the Jets look even worse. I will say, I think Mike White coming back into the lineup, if he plays anything like he has over the last few weeks. I know that the Bills defense is really good, but maybe it just pushes the shootout potential of this game enough where Allen ends up getting to one of those scores in tournaments where you had to have him because that game had a couple of extra touchdowns and the Bills, of course, won, but they did it in a way where they had to score a bunch of points. That would be the ideal situation. I'm certainly going to have Allen in my latest crunch of main slate lineups. I have plenty of him. I'm just looking at it right now. Yeah, I have it just over the field right now in my lineups where he's coming in at about 20%.
He's in the optimal lineup, as you said, Matt, projected for about 20% ownership right now. You look at his game log of late, going back the last handful of weeks, going back to week 3, 37 points, then 21 week 4, week 5, 36, week 6, 30, week 8, because after the bye, obviously he had about 30 again, 29 and a half, and then obviously last week in that weird game against Jacksonville there in Jacksonville only had a dozen. It truly is the anomaly on the game log. I believe it to be the anomaly in general for his season. Just odd. I mean, they were favored to win that game by 2 touchdowns. Didn't make a lick of sense. Congrats, Urban Meyer and company. You had your day. I just don't see him being silenced 2 weeks running, especially when it's a team like the Jets on the other side.
Yeah, well said. And I think there is a distinct difference in ceiling for Allen than those other top tier options. Now, Tom Brady, what can you say about it? He just does things that you don't expect 45-year-olds to do. There's a reason he has the number 2 projection, but if you're talking about the same salary as Josh Allen, who has rushing upside on top of that passing upside, it doesn't look like a solid value. Hurts, he's really interesting to me because he doesn't really pop in our value metrics very much for quarterbacks, and they don't really pass the ball anymore in Philadelphia. I think they've averaged something like 14 or 15 pass attempts over the last 2 games, and they're playing a tough defense in the Denver Broncos, who in that same schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed metric, they're second best in the NFL, right next to the Denver Broncos, right next to the Buffalo Bills. I think I'm probably going to Allen, or I'm going to that lower tier of salary, trying to get some value plays here and then spending that salary at other positions.
Well, so you're to your point on those 2 guys that you just mentioned. Like you said, obviously, you were starting to say with Tom Brady, well, what can you say about Tom Brady? Well, here's what you could say about Tom Brady this weekend. He doesn't have Rob Gronkowski. He doesn't have Antonio Brown. And he might not have Chris Godwin. So maybe, just maybe, Tom Brady, as elite as he is, all-time great, all of it. Look, I'm a Boston guy. I'm certainly a Tom Brady fan. This might not be the best weekend to play him, especially at $40. If you're to choose between Tom Brady and Josh Allen, which one's in the better spot, given the teams they're playing and the weapons they have around him, and it's the same salary, the answer's Josh Allen. It's not complicated. Could you make the case to pay down $7 for Jalen Hurts? Maybe. It's just not nearly as obvious as you were saying before. If we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, when it was just, man, this, like, even when Jalen Hurts, like, it doesn't conceptually even make sense. This guy's still going to find a way to get his 25 fantasy points because he always does, win or lose. Even if it's in garbage time, he gets there. You look at these last 2 games, he's got 17 points last week against the Chargers, the week before in Detroit, not even 12 points. He has 1 total touchdown between these 2 games. And as you noted before, it's heavy on the run game there for the Eagles. So even with the $7 discount, I'm just not going to. Jalen Hurts needs to sell me again. I'm not sold right now. I need to see it before I'm going to roster him.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And if it would be one thing if he were popping in our value metrics, but we're kind of stuck in this position with quarterback often. We know it has the highest raw point upside of any position in fantasy football. So we either have to choose security by going to the top, or getting value the best we can so that we can use that security that we traded to the other positions, the flex positions, which we start more of. I think here in tournaments, it's another story, but it's here for me, just looking at the metrics, it's Allen and then go down in salary.
Since we talked about Allen and Brady as being the high-priced guys, let's not leave out the other member of that trio, Dak Prescott. $40, he is projected for about 21.5 points. Dallas has Atlanta this weekend. Could be a shootout, could be high scoring. Obviously, Atlanta does not have a good defense. The Dallas defense has, been better than it has been bad, but certainly has some question marks. There's been some, roller coaster aspects to it so far this year. And Dak was not good in his first game back after 3 weeks off, with that calf injury, but part of it was the game script and all. It was just a bad game for Dallas in general. Do you expect a bounce back here, a la Josh Allen bouncing back? Do you expect a Dak Prescott bounce back? And is there an argument to be made that maybe he is the best of that trio?
Really, really don't see it. I guess this is the argument you can make. A simple process play. The Vegas line has this game total as the highest total game on the slate. They are favored by 10 points. Essentially, like I said earlier in this show, the betting lines have said nothing has changed about the Cowboys. Their PFF grade remains number 1 in offensive grade as a team. In that regard, then you can play Dak Prescott as the highest salary player. But if you're going to look at percentage chance of being in the optimal lineups at the same salary as Tom Brady and Josh Allen, it's probably not going to look very good. I would say in large field tournaments, Dak Prescott is a fine play as a pivot off of the better looking plays in terms of projections. But if you're just making one lineup, I think it's really tough. I think it's really tough to trust Dak Prescott. The ceiling is there, but the floor is also really low.
You mentioned value. As far as the quarterback position goes, at the top, at about 8.5x projected value from, of course, our own Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Teddy Bridgewater taking on Philadelphia, the other side of that Jalen Hurts game, projected for about 18 points. Ben Roethlisberger, basically the same projection in his game for Pittsburgh against Detroit. As we know, the Lions are not any good. He's about 8x value. Same thing for Taylor Heineke at about 19 projected points. Has the other side of that Tom Brady game for Washington. I see these three options, and I'm not particularly impressed by any of them. I understand they're all value. They're all pay down options. They're all basically half the price than those studs we were talking about before. But I don't know. Do any of these guys, or if you want to include Mac Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, well, not Garoppolo, he's in prime time. Matt Ryan, some of these other primetime options or value options there on the main slate. Do any of them jump out at you?
Yeah, not all at once. Taylor Heineke had a good game against this same Tampa Bay team in the playoffs, which I don't expect by any chance, but he does have some rushing upside. I believe it was 2 games ago where he had over 90 yards rushing. You just can't say that a lot of quarterbacks have that ability. So, he's popping in the metrics, so I'm fine with it there. One thing I do want to mention is you should try to think about what you're doing with the rest of that roster that you're putting that quarterback onto, because I think if you're stacking teams up, then I'm actually more likely to go with those premium options. One thing I should mention in our top stacks tool on Yahoo, the top leverage score, meaning their chance of being the optimal stack versus the projected ownership, Dallas is the number 1 team. So I may not like Dak Prescott, but I like Cowboys stacks. Now, it's different with value quarterbacks. I may have other game stacks in my roster, but instead I'm going to go down in salary here. If that's the case, I want someone who can be incredibly efficient, like we saw Matt Ryan do last week. He's actually one of my favorites down here in salary. And then Heineke. I don't think I want to trust Teddy Bridgewater even against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure Ben Roethlisberger at this point without Chase Claypool. That's not a good thing. And we saw Tannehill miss practice. He's another one who's 25s in salary or below. So right now it's Heineke, it's Matt Ryan. And then, Justin Herbert's way up there at 31. I wouldn't call him a value play. Now you're sort of getting into that mid-tier.
Yeah. Matt and I keep alluding to all these great Awesemo tools that are available to you. Well, you can use them for yourself. Try them out, folks. The Awesemo Plus NFL Express Weekly Pass. It's not even $4 a week. $3.95. That is it. Best way to introduce yourself to Awesemo Plus NFL. Included access to our NFL DFS player and ownership rankings, projections, our expert Slack channel. You want to talk to, some of our pros and find out obviously what they think about any given game, player, or slate, everything that we have to offer, showdown, single game, classic, whatever it may be, multi-day. It's all available to you. New this year to the package, our season-long fantasy football coverage includes our strength of schedule tools for you as well, trade value tool, fantasy streaming helper, also included new this year, projected ownership and optimal lineup projections and probabilities for tiers contests. Those are on DraftKings. So it's a lot is available to you here. It's great. Now is the time to try it out. Awesemo Plus, $3.95 a week for the Express Weekly Package. As I always say, Matt, I can't promise people they're going to win $1 million or anything like that. But will you pay for your little contribution to get that membership in just playing a $5 head-to-head with a buddy? You will. Take advantage of the tools, get your money back, and, stop guessing, start winning, and take advantage of all that we have to offer here at Awesemo. We encourage that you do. We've got about a half hour to go. Let's make the move to running backs. And I talked about it earlier. People in the chat all excited about Dearness going to Foxborough. This is going to be an interesting week here. So you have at the top of our projections, you got Najee Harris, who is projected for just south of 20 points. He's $31. He's not cheap. Then you have Dearness Johnson against the Patriots. With Nick Chubb out, Kareem Hunt out, projected for about 19 points. He's $13. That's it. $13 for Dearness Johnson. And the last time he had an opportunity like this, dude went off. Had like 175 total yards and multiple touchdowns. You would be crazy not to play him. He's going to be owned in excess of probably 50% of lineups unless people are going, looking for differentiation or something like that. But he's going to be wildly owned here on Yahoo especially. You got Jonathan Taylor, about 19 points against Jacksonville, $35. He is the highest price guy in terms of running backs on the main slate. Is it just too obvious to play Johnson for you?
I think he's the decision point of the slate. That's for sure. Every single lineup should have a conscientiousness about what you're doing with Dearness Johnson. And I don't simply mean, am I playing him or am I not playing him? Because if you're not playing him in that particular lineup, what's occurring so that he fails? Are the Cleveland Browns getting blown out? Did he get hurt? Did the Patriots blow people out? Or was there someone in that salary tier at $13, I know it sounds crazy, like Mark Ingram at $14, who actually outscored Dearness Johnson? You said it. The ownership projections currently have Johnson sitting at 51% projected ownership. I think you should make a strong stand about this player. It's not always this simple, but I call it the 100-0 theory. The easiest way to be contrarian with a high ownership player is to just not play them. But it's not the only way. And one thing I like to do is when you have a player like this and you believe in them, there's nothing wrong with the spot, go close to 100%. You're still over the field. All they have to do is have a pretty good, not a have to have it score. And then all you need to do with the rest of the lineups that had him is differentiate yourself with your other positions here. So he is the hinge spot of your lineups this week, but it's not too obvious. The touches are going to be there. He's going to have 20 plus opportunities. And the last time he did that against a very good Denver defense, he came up with 20 plus fantasy points. I'm absolutely fine with it in all formats.
Yeah, just looking at him here, had 24 fantasy points on Yahoo, went 22 for 146 on the ground, the touchdown. I mentioned multiple. He had the one score, caught both his targets for 22 yards as well. He was excellent. He was excellent back in week 7, even had about 10 points the following week as well, as they were still kind of working guys back in. He took advantage of his opportunity. Didn't do anything in week 9 at Cincinnati, but it was very lopsided. It was a lopsided game, but just not opportunity for him. It was a big win there for the Browns, 25 points. We'll see what ends up happening here this weekend, but it's a great spot. It's a smash spot for him. Obviously, when it comes to value, he is far and away the top option, 14x, which is just absurd. But in terms of those other, higher projection guys and higher price guys at that, because basically everybody is. Najee Harris there at the top, I mentioned. Jonathan Taylor as well. Taylor obviously has some guys around him in that backfield. It's not just him. Harris, he's more the focal point there for Pittsburgh. How do you feel about these guys?
It's kind of an interesting debate between the two, an interesting dichotomy, because Taylor, on a per rush basis, might be the most impressive active running back in the NFL right now. His evaded tackles per touch right now sits at over 50%. meaning that on any given touch, he has a 50% chance of outright breaking a tackler who's getting paid millions of dollars to do or try to do just that. That's by far the most in the league. He's also third in the league in breakaway run rate that tracks the amount of runs that go 10 yards or longer. And he's a heavy favorite against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And I feel like if they hadn't just beat Josh Allen and the Bills the way that they did, I would just be saying this is all systems go for Taylor. But I would understand if you don't want the efficiency of Taylor, or you don't want to bank on the efficiency of Taylor, and you just want the guaranteed touches of Najee Harris. There are only a few players who have 30 opportunity upside every single week, and especially with Chase Claypool sidelined, Harris is definitely on that list. So, I mean, even if he has a game where he doesn't, on a per touch basis, blow you out of the water, he could easily have enough catches and scores where you had to have him in your lineup to win tournaments.
You've got a whole bunch of guys, Matt, that are kind of bunched together, similar projections in terms of points, similar pricing as well, right in line with kind of what we were talking about, Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, but just a little bit below in terms of the points, like Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott. You can look at Aaron Jones as well. Maybe you could include Christian McCaffrey in that mix if you want to as well. All these guys kind of in that 16, 17, 18 projected points and all north of $30 as well. Do you like any of these guys, or are you more inclined to really hug value this week and pay up at other places?
No, I really do like them this week. I'm just looking at my latest crunch of my main slate lineups versus the projected rostership, and I'm over the field on Austin Eckler. I'm over the field on Najee Harris. I'm over the field on Jonathan Taylor. I'm over the field on Christian McCaffrey. I'm over the field on Ezekiel Elliott. You can tell the way I'm trying to build my lineups in this half PPR format. We want this floor and ceiling that these premium salary running backs offer us, especially those in smash spots. We have a lot of big home favorite running backs that have 3 to 10 target upside. If we're talking about Austin Eckler here, just bouncing some names off here, I have 20% of my lineups right now that are going to include Austin Eckler, because I believe in this high total game against the Vikings that should be competitive throughout, we're going to see him get back to that receiving floor that we're used to him getting. 10 targets I mentioned in week 8, and then week 6 before the bye, he had 7 targets. He's been utilized heavily in the passing game, and of course, he'll get plenty of rushes too. The way to beat the Vikings is on the ground, and they have to rely on him through the air. He's my favorite of that group.
Robert in the chat, if I can call you Bob in the chat, hit the like button. Thanks in advance. We thank you, Robert, for encouraging everyone to do so. Do hit that like, hit the subscribe button as well if you want to be notified when all sorts of great Awesemo shows are coming your way, as they do each and every day and throughout the day, 7 days a week. It's not just NFL. It's heavy NFL this time of year. You got NBA, you got NHL. Obviously, baseball playoffs are right behind us. You got golf, you got college sports. There's a lot of great stuff. So make sure you tune in for all of it here. Now, talking value, obviously it's Dearness Johnson. We talked about that, but then this new dynamic here, or what is old is new again, or however you want to look at it. Like, you got Mark Ingram in a great spot for the Saints, teamed up with Alvin Kamara again. Michael Carter is a great value option, about 8x, 10x for Ingram. James Conner, absolutely in that conversation, projected for about 17 points for the Cardinals this weekend. He's about 8x. Mike Davis is right there as well, projected for about 8x value return. Who do you like of these value guys other than obviously Johnson?
Yeah, Johnson is a value, of course. He's in a separate category. And I think Ingram might actually get up there by the time we get to Sunday morning and people realize the workload that he's in for in this offense without Kamara. The one thing I do want to mention here, let's just take a macro view. Sometimes we get so caught up in the stats and the volume and the opportunity because we're trying to project DFS scores. Does a Trevor Siemian, Marquez Callaway, Mark Ingram core of make an offense in the year 2021? Is that like a fair question to
or
ask?
any
Not
other year for that matter.
I mean, he was a Heisman winner 10 years ago. So, I mean, you got to give Ingram some credit in his ability to produce. And, I guess it was 5 years ago where he was an RB1 every single week in fantasy football, but we're many years with that in our past. I guess, I guess he's just a pure volume play. And when I optimize lineups and it just shows what price it is and how much volume I can get, I'm going to have a lot of Mark Ingram right now. It does matter how popular he ends up because right now he's at a projected rostership of 3.4%. I can guarantee you that will be much higher. I think James Conner is the player that everyone's sort of forgetting about because we've had so many injuries this week that last week's Chase Edmonds injury feels like old news. But this is a player in Conner who is already getting near the league lead in goal line touches. And now he's got that backfield essentially all to himself. I know they've got injuries that they're dealing with, but even with Colt McCoy under center, they looked competent offensively. So I think it's all systems go for Conner at his $21 salary. That's very modest.
He is projected to be in about 25% of lineups. He shows up in the optimal. I'm looking at the optimal right here. You got a whole bunch of popular plays, projected popular plays in that lineup. We'll see, obviously, what happens between now and kickoff for the main slate on Sunday. Still, 46 hours away or so. But we'll see. We'll see what ends up evolving here in that course of time. Let's go to the wide receivers here with about 25 minutes or so left in this show. And if anyone has any questions, get them in. We encourage you to do so. So Cooper Kupp, a primetime guy. You don't worry about him. Same story for Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel. So your main slate focus, Davante Adams, projected for about 17 points. He's $32. Deontay Johnson, if not one Johnson, another, about 16 points, $23. So a real good pay down option. Obviously a good value at wide receiver, as well as being projected to have a great day. Chris Godwin at the moment is in the mix, but he's a pregame decision, as Bruce Arians called him. So we'll see. He's projected for about 15 points. So is Keenan Allen for the Chargers, $26 for him. So, it's obviously right now the focus is going to be on Davante Adams getting Aaron Rodgers back under center. But if not him, or if even him, in your eyes, I want your opinion, but if not him, who else?
Yeah, I'm going to be right with the field on Adams. I don't have any strong feelings, negative or positive, about Adams. So I think his current rostership projection of 16.4% is pretty fair. I'm going to be right there with it, especially when you've got Mike Evans, who looks to be stepping into a possibly gigantic role this weekend, sitting there at a $2 discount from Adams at 30 in salary. Right now, his projected rostership, Evans, is about 13%. Again, I think that keeps going up and up as Godwin's status becomes more and more unclear. I think Godwin's going to sit. I just don't think this looks very good. I think that they want him to play more than he's capable of playing is really what this comes down to. And I still think that Tom Brady and Mike Evans and the smattering of other weapons they have is enough to beat this Washington defense that has taken a huge step back. I do have under the field on DK Metcalf right now and on AJ Brown, but in tournaments, they're not terrible plays. They certainly have 30-point upside, especially DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams stacks are so difficult to get to in salary. I think it's going to make your roster very unique if you end up going there with that two-person game stack.
What about CD Lamb? He's projected for about 14 points. He's $26. So again, considerably cheaper than some of the guys that you could be looking at. I mean, $6 cheaper than Adams. He is coming off a couple of great games and heavily targeted at that. He's putting up a ton of yards. He's getting into the end zone. He's got Dak Prescott back, obviously. Not that he was bad even when Cooper Rush was in there. So what are your expectations for him here against the Falcons?
I'm not going to say don't play a player who's averaging 9 targets over his last 3 games on PFF's number 1 offense, but there is some volatility with CD Lamb and his output. And, all wide receivers have that volatility, but he's still just 28th in the NFL in target share, 33rd in the NFL in air yard share. He's getting deep targets. His 15 targets of 20 yards or more downfield is 7th in the NFL. But while the opportunity of late has been good, I still think that compared to the other players in his salary tier, his opportunity floor is lower. in the Dallas offense, 55-point total. The ceiling's really high, but that just kind of makes it a tournament play more than something where I want to focus on it as a lock button cash play them everywhere kind of play.
As far as some of the value at receiver, you've got Raymond there for Detroit. He's about 8x. Other side of that game, James Washington for Pittsburgh, about 8x return as well. DJ Moore, we'll see. I mean, DJ Moore may soon be dead in terms of fantasy with Cam Newton being signed. This may be the last hurrah there with PJ Walker, depending on how things go there under center for the Panthers. But DJ Moore is projected for about 13 points against Arizona. He's about 8x projected value as well, and he's not expensive. He's $17. Usually this is a guy we're talking about who's right there at the top of the projections. I mean, 20-something points. He's obviously considerably less than that without Sam Darnold. So what do you think of some of these options here?
I'm focusing primarily on James Washington, who went from asking for a trade to every down roll on the Pittsburgh Steelers due to injuries basically this year. Pat Freiermuth definitely benefits from a Chase Claypool injury, as does Deontay Johnson, who I'm going to have a ton of, by the way. But James Washington, I think this is really his time to shine here. Against the Detroit Lions, there really isn't a better defensive matchup, except for maybe when you play the New York Jets, which is why I love Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley this week. I will have a ton of them. Beasley clearly is the higher floor play at this point because Sanders has thrown some goose eggs up, which is always a bummer. But he has literally 14 target, 2 touchdown upside in this offense as well. And there couldn't be a better matchup against the Jets. You just really can't do better. So I have over the field on Sanders right now as well.
So compared to what we normally get, tight end position's kind of a wasteland for this main slate because you got Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. They're all in primetime. So none of them are available to you here on the main slate. Kyle Pitts, no slouch. I mean, the rookie is doing what everyone expected him to do, obviously, when he was taken top 5. He's projected for about 13 points. He's $21. Good value option as well at about 6x. After him, though, then it drops a little bit. You have Dalton Schultz, who is projected for about 11 points. He's $17. So someone you could consider from a value standpoint. Also, TJ Hawkinson, you mentioned Pat Freiermuth. He's another guy that's in that mix. Dallas Goedert as well. So again, these are not, it's not like I'm naming guys that people have never heard of, but they're not household names to the degree, obviously, that we're always harping on how great the Kelces, the Kittles, and the Wallers of the world are. And obviously even Mark Andrews unavailable after he went last night. So what do you think of this next tier plus obviously Kyle Pitts?
I think it's a mess. I think it's a mess is what it is. It is a really weird slate. I feel like in the last few weeks, we've had a plethora of these hyper athletic hybrid tight end wide receiver options in the main slate. And now it's just Kyle Pitts. And really hats off to him for hitting all these really, really lofty expectations that we had for this 4th overall pick heading into the year. He is my highest projected rostered tight end, but it's still under the field right now compared to our projected rostership of about 25%. I have less than that. In fact, I have 7 tight ends who are rostered between 5 and 13%. And 11 tight ends between 3 and 13% in my latest lineup run. So I'm taking a smattering. What I love to do in weeks like this is I'm thinking about the rest of my lineup. Do I have a running back that I feel a lot stronger about? Maybe the tight end on his team fits, or maybe the tight end on the opposite team playing him fits. When I correlate like that, tight ends and running backs particularly, they correlate better than you think. And I want when I have a volatile position in general in tight end, I just want to match it with other things going right in my lineup. If you ask me who my favorite of the group is, it's still Pitts. And then I'm going right to the value of Dalton Schultz. He and Jared Cook are my only other double-digit rostered tight ends.
Kyle Pitts shows up in the optimal. He's not been good the last couple of weeks, just to mention that. Targets are there. He's getting 13 targets the last couple games, only has 5 catches, no touchdowns. So not unlike or nothing like, I should say, the back-to-back 20-point games that he had on Yahoo in weeks 5 and 7 there for Atlanta. So we'll see what he can do this next time around, obviously in a favorable matchup in Dallas. Going to value, though, staying with that game, Dalton Schultz. Once upon a time, we were asking the question, is Dalton Schultz fantasy viable? Is this a guy we need to be taking seriously, even though you have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and obviously Zeke out of the backfield and even it's Blake Jarwin. Like, there are other options obviously there in that Dallas offense. You need to consider right now, though, Michael Gallup is coming back as well. He's expected to play this weekend. Should we be taking Schultz seriously?
I think you should. And Blake Jarwin actually placed on IR of late. And yes, they get Gallup back. That's huge. And Malik Turner scoring touchdowns, just like we all projected last week.
2 of them in the last 5 minutes.
That's football for you, man. But
yeah,
I'm going to go back to Dalton Schultz. Dak Prescott and him have been on the same page all season. I think you can pretty easily project 6 targets for Schultz. And I think the ceiling is really there for him. We're just not seeing a lot of players other than Pitts who have a realistic chance at 16, 18, 20 points. Schultz is in that group for sure. The only reason I don't have even more Schultz is because I think Dallas Goedert at 15 in salary looks pretty appealing as well. One stat I've been throwing out all week long is that Philadelphia has just stopped passing. They've stopped passing altogether. On average, they've Goddard, who is a primary player, an every down player, ran an average of 15 routes the last 2 weeks. He's been targeted on 46% of his routes over the last 2 weeks. That is by far the top in the NFL. It's an unsustainable rate, but so is 15 routes run for an entire team's offense. I think the pass volume comes up, and with it, the overall volume for Dallas Goedert.
Schultz, just looking at it, by the way, has had between 5 and 8 targets every week this season other than week 2. So to your point, Dak is always looking in his direction. What about Jared Cook? He's only projected for about 8 points this Chargers game against Minnesota, but he is $13. He's almost 6.5x value projected here for him. What do you think of the vet? We haven't spent a lot of time talking about him this year.
I think he's a process play, and he's better in like a cash situation because I don't think the ceiling is really there for him. Is there really any scenario where he has 25 or more fantasy points? I just don't think that's true. But I will say we constantly want to target home favorite tight ends that are low salary and going overlooked. And he fits the bill in spades there, under 10% projected rostership. 13 in salary is certainly a very, very low salary. And so I don't love the player. He's 35 years old. There are a lot of better, more exciting, more explosive options. Some of them we've already mentioned in this Los Angeles offense, but he projects well for his salary. And so he's popping in my lineups. Schultz, and Pitts, the only double-digit tight ends that I'm currently rostering.
I know everybody gets excited to talk about defense. Let's talk about defense and special teams here in the last, 5-10 minutes of this show. If anybody has any questions, like I said, get them in. Questions, thoughts, concerns, whatever it may be. Or if you just want to know what, would make a good gift idea for Eric Lindquist's wedding, we are taking suggestions. We want to be able to send them a Chili's gift card or something like that. So whatever it is, shout it out. DSTs, the Bills, right back to the Bills because, of course, they have the Jets. They are projected for almost 10 points, $23. So expensive. There's no ignoring that. Expensive DST play, obviously. Steelers at about 9 projected points. The Cardinals about 9 projected points. The prices range. You got the Cardinals at $20, the Steelers at 16. How do you feel about this grouping?
Yeah, I don't think I need to get to the Bills, and the 23 in salary is pretty darn steep. But still, it means something when one team has 1.5 more projected fantasy points than the rest of their position, and the ownership is coming in really low. And I think that's because people want to spend that salary elsewhere this week. But I'm seeing a situation where everyone's trying to take the option that looks just as good, but is less in salary. But sometimes the most obvious good choice is really where it's at. I know Mike White has been better than the rest of the Jets quarterbacks, but the Buffalo Bills in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, that metric I continue to reference for defenses, there's no one close to the Buffalo Bills and how they stop other offenses. So I think they're a better play, especially in tournaments, than their projected rostership implies.
We just got some news, by the way, on the running back front that I'm seeing. It looks like Jamal Williams is going to be out this weekend. He had been questionable. He's not going to play. I realize that's not overly significant, but in terms of opening up other opportunity in that backfield for the Lions, what do you think?
Yeah, I was already getting to some Dondre Swift as it is. And, I really think that there are only three running backs who I would call receiving specialist bell cows in the NFL. And one of them looks like they're going to be out this week in Alvin Kamara. We already talked about Austin Eckler and his elite target upside. The same is really true for Dondre Swift. What does this sound like? In their last 3 weeks, they have a 7-target game and a 10-target game. I literally just said that about Austin Eckler. I literally just had to go check and make sure I didn't click the wrong link that I just saw the last game log, because they're so similar on different teams, albeit the touchdown equity for Swift is different. But yeah, I'll be getting to some Swift with Williams out. That's just more guaranteed touches.
Well, and he's projected for 15 points before the Williams news. So we'll see, obviously, how things evolve here as we take a look at that. I didn't finish up with defense. I just wanted to put the news out there as it was coming across. And I'm sure, we're at, like you said at the beginning of the show, we're at that hour, starting to get that news here on a Friday afternoon. Injury reports will be coming out soon, and seeing obviously just what the weekend looks like in general. But going back to the DSTs, what about if you were to, I don't know, like a Colts versus Bucks versus some of those other kind of middling options, if you didn't, like you said, want to pay all the way up for a Buffalo?
Yeah, Colts look really interesting. Bucks look really, really interesting to me. I'm getting to a bunch of them. The Cardinals too. You're starting a game against PJ Walker. I know that game could get weird, especially if Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins sits. You would say the range of outcomes for that defense is higher than others, but I'm okay playing high range of outcomes defense when the high range of outcomes includes a very high ceiling game, possibly defensive scores. They are third, the Cardinals are, in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. They're no slouch defensively, and they're playing a backup quarterback. I don't think we see Cam Newton this week. They've already said, Matt Rule has said that Walker is going to start. Maybe it's one of those situations where it's so bad that Cam Newton ends up starting the third quarter, like the Thursday night game, because this could be an onslaught for the Cardinals, even with the depleted offense.
What do you expect in terms of, and I don't think he's going to play this weekend, but let's just say, like you're saying, things are ugly and he comes in halfway through. What kind of Cam Newton are we going to get? He wasn't good last year for the Patriots, loses his job, at least seemingly in part because obviously he wasn't vaccinated and he was just outplayed by Mac Jones in preseason and training camp and everything like that. And it took him a little while. Catches on with his old team now. He's healthy. He is vaccinated, so he doesn't have to worry about, all of the protocols the same way and Aaron Rodgers does, for instance, right now, or the way that Cam had to back in the preseason when he missed the better part of a week around a preseason game because obviously he had run into a situation. I mean, Carolina gave him good money, Matt, gave him starter money. He's guaranteed $4.5 million for the rest of the year, up to $10 million. You don't pay a guy. I don't understand why you pay a guy like that who has no leverage to begin with, but you certainly don't pay a guy like that who you don't intend to play.
Yeah, you said it. That's exactly right. They're playing him eventually. They just need to give him time to run the offense because it's probably a very different offense than the last time he was in Carolina. But I think what really occurred here is that the Panthers knew that Darnold was hurt already. And they were just seeing it worsen and worsen and worsen, but they knew the backup situation was untenable, unwinnable. And so they were trying with all their might to find ways to get Darnold to play. Once that happened, they realized they were going to need to shut him down for good. Cam Newton is a fine replacement here. And I know he was up and down last year, and I think the perception from a lot of people is that he wasn't good. But what I see is that he was the number one overall fantasy quarterback in week 17 of last year. Literally the last game he played, he was the QB1 overall. And he had multiple 30-point performances last week. This is the type of player I like to take bets on in tournaments before people get excited about. I'm going to have him when he eventually starts, really regardless of matchup, because the ceiling is as high as it is for any other rushing quarterback. They could still run power at the goal line like they did in New England last year. I know they have Christian McCaffrey, but in DFS and really in season-long leagues, I'm going to be taking bets on Cam.
My guy Jordan Klein popped into the chat, says, miss you, Koff. Jordan, I'm with Tyler now. Breakups are never easy. I understand, but we're going to need to move on. We don't need to take this to a public forum for the people.
Wow,
no,
you guys need a moment.
I miss you too. Thanks for being here with us, Jordan. Thanks for checking in. So, overarching thoughts on this slate as we've got a couple minutes left. Is there, if for anyone that joined us late, do you have a couple of favorite plays, studs, and value?
Yeah, I think if you're playing stacks, definitely look at our top stacks tool. We love Dallas stacks. We love Tampa Bay stacks. And that has to do with the fact that they're high salary quarterbacks who are less popular. So the second you create lineups like that, you're actually gaining leverage on the field. And guys, I think that we are totally underestimating the Seattle Green Bay shootout potential here. If everyone's back, why can't there be 70 points in that game, especially with them trying to get the weight of those missed games off their shoulders in Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson? I will certainly be having plenty of them and their pass catchers hoping for that shootout.
The optimal lineup, and this is just the last crunch I ran, so maybe it's changed in the last 10 minutes, but you have got, I'm not going to give everything away because I want people to jump into that weekly membership and try some of these tools out for yourselves. But popular plays, no surprise based on what we've talked about: Josh Allen, Dearness Johnson, Kyle Pitts, James Conner, Steelers DST. There are some very popular plays as things stand, and the optimal is going to change a little bit too, based on what guys end up getting ruled out and what value plays emerge, and maybe a Mark Ingram finds his way in there if there's no Alvin Kamara, that kind of thing. But any plays that surprise you at all as far as the field just being really heavy on these guys?
Ooh, someone that is there's no one who really sticks out. Maybe Cordero Patterson's getting a little too much love, but still, we're talking about 14% projected rostership or something like that. It's not egregious. Nothing really sticks out as unplayable. I will say that, especially when we're talking about like the tight end position, there's only one pay up in salary option, and it's not bad. So there really is no bad plays at that position. Yeah, I'm not really seeing much there.
Coming up over the rest of this Awesemo YouTube day, there's a lot of great content. Obviously, right before us, there was some NHL strategy talk coming up. You've got the Prize Picks college football show starts in about 5 minutes. You'll have Vanek and another Matt Gajeski coming along talking about that. NBA Deeper Dive for a big slate tonight starts at 4:45. Lofty will be around with the other Adam, Bearded Adam, at 6 to 7:30. NBA Live Before Lock, Ehrenberg and EMAC 2024. Those guys will be around as well. So there's a lot of good content, different sports that are coming your way over the course of the rest of this Friday, and then obviously throughout the weekend as well. I will not be back with you until talking a little NBA jock market coming up on Wednesday with Moose, Jeff Ulrich, then right back to the Yahoo grind here for football on Thursday and Friday. But how about yourself? Can the people expect to find you over the weekend or early next week?
Yes, sir. I will be on Awesemo's Live Before Lock right before kickoff on the main slate, right around 12 noon. It happens right after the deeper dive, which ends somewhere between 11:45 and noon on Sunday mornings. Get ready for kickoff. Lock in those lineups with us. We'll see you then. There
you go. Well, make sure you at least take advantage of this program for the next few hours anyway, before things get horribly outdated. And then make sure you tune in on Sunday before everything locks and goes live, because that's when you get the latest, greatest breaking information. But thanks to our producer, Tyler, for keeping us in check as he always does. And Matt, pleasure, man. I mean, look, I hope Eric's having a great time again, getting married and putting life before work or whatever that's all about. But at least it finally brought the two of us together.
Yeah. It was great to meet you in these streets. Hope we get to chop it up again soon. This was great. Let's win some money.
I look forward to it, man. Hopefully Jordan's not out there crying in his ice cream. We'll see you guys later. Enjoy a great weekend.